All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We're delighted that you could join us today for what is our Friday Club Speakers, Making It in Germany. My name is Thomas Bellew, and I'm the head of public diplomacy here at the Irish Embassy in Berlin. And my colleague Elias Ben-Mana is working alongside me, and we're delighted to have Feeney join us today. Dr. Angela has been living in Germany for quite some years. She is an opera, I don't know what the exact term is, but she's been a very large figure in opera, both in Ireland and in Germany. She was the first ever non-German soloist signed by the Bavarian State Opera. She has participated in a large number of operas across the world as a soloist, as the lead singer. She has been a mentor and teacher to a long line of opera singers who have been coming up through the ranks in Ireland and in Germany. Now, without further ado, I would actually hand over to Dr. Angela and say, Angela, you're very, very welcome. Delighted that you you all of your stories right up the state parade that you are helping organize with the team. Okay, so gentlemen, please, Dr. Angela.
Yeah, good afternoon, Thomas. I just wanted to say the last few sentences of your talk we didn't hear, so I'm not exactly sure what you said about me, but I heard the first bit. Yeah, I am an Irish opera singer. I'm from Belfast. I grew up in Belfast. I'm the middle child of 7 children. My father was a docker and my mother had all the rest of the work to do. I grew up in a time when it was very difficult to be any sort of age in Belfast. You know, from the 1969 onwards, we'd go to school and wouldn't be sure if we'd get home. But my father and my parents installed in us, we had to get to work. We kept away from whatever, but it was very difficult to keep away from the things that were going on. I started singing at school in the school choir, which was one of the reasons further on down, which what I started with Tommy Gorman, the All Ireland School Choir competition, because as far as I'm concerned, everybody can sing. Some can sing better than others. Some can sing very well, and some earn their living as singing, and I was the latter. I started off as a folk singer with guitar. I bought a guitar and taught myself how to play and tried to get playing anywhere I could, because it was, as I said, very difficult to go out at night. I mean, I was a young 14, 15-year-old in those times. And sometimes when we look back and I meet back with my old school friends, we wonder actually how we did anything in those times. But I had a great singing teacher at school who unfortunately died last year, Miss Blake, and I only found out about it. You see, my mother is dead. We always knew who was dead and dying because my mother read the deaths, the first page she read in the paper, so we knew. So I only heard quite recently, when I was back in Ireland there, the end of August, that she had died. She put a lot of time into teaching me songs, a lot of which I still sing to this day. She entered me for competitions. And then one day from school, she brought us to an opera, La Traviata, a Zeffirelli production in the opera, in the cinema. So when I saw that, I was totally amazed at, this way of singing. And I decided then that that's what I was going to do, because I wanted a bit more challenge. I loved singing folk songs and Irish folk songs with my guitar. And sure, I thought I was Nana Muscuri, for those of you who can remember Nana Muscuri. And I could only go so far there with that. And as I got older, just by pure chance, this sentence you'll hear probably often by me, la forza del destino, the force of destiny, led me to get an appointment to audition for the great and wonderful Veronica Dunn, Ronnie, in Dublin one Saturday. And I drove down. I was coming to an age where I decided I wasn't sure what way I was going to work this out, because I didn't really know an opera singer, nor did my parents. But I knew I was trying to find the road and the way. And so I went in, I sang for her, and then she wrote me in her book, right, next Saturday, can you get down here for 12 o'clock for a lesson? And I mean, she those of you who have never met Ronnie, unfortunately, she also died last April. But for about 6 months, I went up and down when I could get up and down. I mean, that was still the time when you either maybe got the Porta down, but you couldn't get any further, or there was a bomb on the line in Newry or Drogheda. But they used to, I heard this later in years, they used to put a bet on to see if I got down for my lesson on a Saturday. And sometimes I went with a rugby crowd. It was going anybody. And then I learned how to drive. My daddy taught me how to drive. And one particular week, it was coming up to the Fish Coal. Ronnie needed us to be there to go over our pieces. And I was a competition. I'm very competitive, I later found out. And so I went down to the docks to my daddy, and I found him, and I said, can I have the car to go to Dublin? Thinking he would say no. And he said yes. And then I thought, how do I get to Dublin? With the car and get on the bottom of the M1 and drive until you come to Dublin. So I did. So that, people, it's interesting when I've been doing talks like this, especially to younger students, when I'm trying to, say you have to work, you have to do this. And I think you have it so easy. When I think back how difficult it was then, but you still, if you want to do it, you'll do it. Because if students come in to me and I ask, what do you want to do? Yes, I'd like to sing, but I don't know. Then I tell them, don't. Because if you don't know that's what you want to do, don't do it. Because it's a difficult, like every career, it's a difficult decision. But once you make it, it's hard work, because we're at a disadvantage in Ireland in that now it's much, much better. But when you think, I'm living in Munich 43 years now. I came here all those years ago. I mean, you couldn't even do exams. You could do your singing exams, but you couldn't actually do a degree, a performance degree at that time when I was in Dublin. But Ronnie Dunn fought through, and we were actually the guinea pigs for those that came after us to see how it was done. And I stayed with her for 3 years. I actually lived in their family home, which her daughter and myself were over there recently clearing it out. So it was sad, happy, and we had a laugh, but it was a lot of work. But I did my 3 years. I worked. I gave up my job in the customs and excise. I still remember her saying into my ear, you have to give up that good pensionable job and come down here and study full time. Can you imagine the pension I would have now? Well, I have a good pension, but it was just her way of saying, give up that job. And she so used to saying, stick to me and you'll be wearing diamonds. That was Ronnie's thing, stick to me and you'll be wearing diamonds. So it happened at one stage, the Dublin Grand Opera Society were performing Tannhäuser, and there was a singer, a tenor, who was producing it. And Ronnie and Kenneth Neate, he was an Australian with Canadian citizenship. They both had sung in Covent Garden together in Carmen. Ronnie was singing Michaela. And he'd heard that Ronnie was teaching, so he came around. You see, La Forza del Destino, the force of destiny. He came around to say hello when I was having my lesson. And Ronnie said, yeah, I want you to listen to this young singer, but she can't stay here. She needs to go. There's no work here. She needs to go. And she knew that Ken was teaching here at the Hochschule in Munich. So I sang for him. He said, yeah, because he was head of the foreign student singers. And he said, yeah, no, I'd say no problem. She will be accepted. So I packed, when I think about it now, I packed all my stuff in these boxes we used to get tea in. When I arrived, all my clothes smelled of tea. But they weren't cardboard. And up until a few years ago, I still had them. But I packed all my stuff up. I went over, did the audition. I was going whether they accepted me or not. I did get accepted and worked with Ken through those years. And, with all the work that you do, all the exams, I did my Abschluss, my final Prüfung here. And then I joined, auditioned and got into the Bavarian Opera Studio, Staatstheater München Opera Studio for young singers. In the meantime, I met my husband here, the Force of Destiny. He was the orchestra director of the orchestra, and I had got one of the roles in the yearly opera. In my second year I met him, and he was also a very famous German horn player. And I always say, when I said this to Anne Dempsey, as I see Anne Dempsey there, yeah, hi Joanne. I met my husband, and I had seen him at the various things, and a week later he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Look at Thomas's eyes. I said yes, and we nearly made the 40th anniversary in 2019. He sadly died. So there's that Force of Destiny going on, because he then asked me to marry him, and I said I will only get married. See, Ronnie done brainwashing. I'll only get married if I have a contract. And there I got a contract for the opera studio. So we got married that August and toured around Italy on our honeymoon and came back to the opera studio. And that's when my professional life really started. I mean, the theatre, I had never seen a stage besides of this theatre. And I will also mention the acceptance of German, this part of the culture in Germany, that, if you're good, they'll take you on, and they'll make you better and better and better. And it's the same with when it came to study here. It's the only country that if they accept you, if you're good enough, your tuition is free. So for those 2 years, each year, it was Deutschmark then, it was 10,000 Deutschmarks that they paid out, so 20 in all. And so this thinking and this way really suited my way of living and the way I was brought up. This caring, as my father used to always say, be socially aware of people who don't have what you have. And we were really poor when I look back at it. We didn't know then that we were, but I was also quite amazed. They would take me in to the opera studio. There was German. It was almost, it doesn't matter what you are, but if you're good, they want you, and they will. I can't find the word I'm looking for. They will make you better. Not that you're ill. I can't find that English word that I'm looking for. But they will do that, and ever since that time, that was in 1980, there's been an Irish singer in the opera studio, and most of the time they will progress into the big house, as we call it, as a soloist. So it was the Force of Destiny all of that time with Ronnie and Ken, and then coming here and in the studio, because the head of the opera studio, Heinrich Bender, when Ronnie was starting her international competition in Dublin, I said, why don't you get him to come over, because it'll save us Irish ones trying to find the money for a flight to go over to audition. So ever since then, there's been somebody from the Staatsoper on the jury. And so that's why that has continued. And I mean, it's not just Ronnie's students. There has been Mary Brennan's students have been there. Dean Power is a student of Mary Brennan's. So that whole experience of coming to Germany and just being accepted and provided with things that I couldn't get at home. You know, for me, there's a difference in leaving home and having to leave. We had no other choice. If we wanted to do what we do then, you had to leave. It is a lot better, and we have an Irish National Opera Company now. But there are 83 opera companies in Germany, and most of them full-time. So I often say, if you can't get a job in Germany as a singer, you may forget about it. There are so many opportunities, so many choices, and there's so many choices to progress, you know, from a smaller theatre to because they're all intermingled, you know, they all are intermingled and have full-time choruses, full-time orchestras, and soloists. So, I mean, I couldn't have landed anywhere better than here. And one of my reasons also, you know, I saw in Britain, there were good opera companies, but there wasn't a lot of them. And there was a lot of us. So, and then I thought, well, at least I'm going to a country and I can learn a language. And no matter what, I have 2 languages then, well, 3, because I had French. So and I remember doing an interview with Sean Rafferty for BBC, and he said, well, how do they treat you in Germany as a singer? And it was the first time that I found, I mean, it was the beginning of my career, and I just said, well, they treat you like a bar of gold. It's so important to them here, their culture. I mean, Ireland is so full of music, and I mean, if you just look at the literature prizes they've won for the Nobel, and the Irish singers that are dotted all over this country in Germany and further, but especially in Germany. And we have a company, it's not full-time. I always say it's a good company if you can pay a mortgage, and we don't have that. And a lot of the Irish singers can now live at home. Celine Byrne started that, was a young singer, which most of you probably have heard of. Well, she's now, I heard an interview, she's now not the young singers anymore. There's younger ones coming up after her, but she started it, a brilliant voice, but she had a family at home in Ireland. So she was the first really to start this being at home in Ireland, because you can get to anywhere. Well, not for the last 18 months, but you can get to anywhere from Ireland. And it's just a hop over to Germany. So she was the first to kind of start that and earn a living with being at home in Ireland, which most of us can't do. Well, especially if you've started a family or you want to start a family. So getting here for young singers, because most, I mean, I go through the line of Alison Brown or Andy Murphy, who's now singing, I can't remember, with Wiesbaden, Francis Lucy. When you start to think of them, it's so long ago, but all those singers have come through here, and the Germans are always accepting of them, but you have to work hard. You learn. It's not that we don't work hard in Ireland, but you've so much competition. You have the Americans, you have the Japanese, you know, you have then you've all the East Bloc around. So if you watch and see how they work, how they organize, how they integrate people, I am talking from the music, the cultural part of it. It is such it's such joy. It makes you so much enjoy your work when you know people are there behind you and are looking out for you. and your progress is watched. And, you know, even here, you know, today I'll be asked on to, you know, the juries, because once you are noted as a singer, a soloist at the Bavarian Staatsoper, you know, that opens so many more gates, because if you've made it there, if you got in there, you know, Frankfurt is there, Hamburg, Berlin, Stuttgart, you name it, it's there. And, you know, it is a great, and I think it's a great testament to the teaching that goes on in Ireland. Ireland does the hard part of it, actually, teaching somebody anything from the start, piano, and your little son, the violin, the flute, any instrument. The difficult part of it is at the start, you know, when you have to know how to hold it, how to sing, how to breathe. And we do that. We have a great reputation. I mean, the colleges in London, Manchester, Cardiff are full of our singers, because after we do our study, there's no place really else to go but leave. And that's what we do all the time. It's a little less now, but it's still not enough. And we can see how it's still going on in Ireland. Sorry that, you know, football and everything's over. I'm not going controversial, but it's been very hard for them, Thomas. And, you know, there's still, it's really has been hard for everybody, but we still, even without Corona, we still keep giving our jewels away. Whereas the Germans keep theirs, they have, and they take more jewels in beside that. And that's how it grows, and that's how they get this all-world singers. And when you do that, the standard goes up, everything goes up, and I love that. I love that challenge. And I find most of the young Irish singers that have come here love that challenge as well. I'm okay with my time, am I, Thomas? So the difference from when I came and now, of course, there's a difference in the whole world, is social media. They can find out so much more now just by the click of a button of what's on, where to go, what to do, whereas we kind of walk blindly into it. And their connection with each other. You know, when I came here, all the singers that I'd worked with, studied with, were still all there. And this is one thing that I love to see, that they can connect with each other, they can help each other. I mean, there's no mobile phones. The best you could do was a letter. I was clearing out my cellar when it got flooded during the summer, and I found all my letters applying to the college, and I thought, my God, you sat down and did that. Now you go on a machine and type in an email and send it off, which is great, which has brought them even closer. But I wouldn't have changed it. You can't change when you're born. And as I said, I'm here 43 years, but it's like I came yesterday. And all the things that I've been able to achieve. And then Michael Collins was the fault of me leading into some of the things that I'm doing now. I've always been involved. I've putting on concerts, partaken in concerts, putting on in home in Belfast in August when we'd have the festival, and I've always been involved. As I used to say about my parents, their children, they're in everything but the crib. And so we were always, you know, the GAA played a great part in our home, still does. So we were always doing something. But those, it's hard to believe it's 43 years. And finding, yes, that's what I find, on my card and my student's card from here, and all the, thinking back to it made me think a lot back. It was like as if I was telepathic that Thomas Bellew was going to ask me to do this. because I hadn't seen them for ages, and all my certificates from here and seeing the things that I wrote in German. When I came here, I couldn't speak a word of German. I could sing Lieder, and you have the English translation down below. And that was one of the reasons why I said, I want to, when I'm singing them, to exactly know what exactly I'm saying, not a translation of it. So it kind of fell on my feet. And then Michael Collins came along, and I saw this thing about a wider and deeper footprint with Germany and Ireland after Brexit. Said it once, I'm not saying it anymore. And I went to that meeting, and there were people there that I hadn't come across. Well, I knew Paul Daly, you know, from the pubs, and Frank and Alison, Frank McGlynn. And everybody could get up and say, and Michael tabled and told what they were wanting to do. He was doing his little tour. Do you remember that time he did a tour of going around different cities in Germany? And sometimes it's dangerous for me to go with things like that, because I think, yeah, we can do. And that's one of the things I said was what I just said about, can we stop giving our jewels away? But I said, you know, we've got so many things on, but we're not really linked in. And that's when the German-Irish Council idea came up, and Anne was a part of that. And on that night, I met those Irish people, and the parade was coming up, it was the Patrick's Day parade, and they were talking about, they had stalls and that, and I thought, well, can we have a stall? Can the classical singers have a stall? And I remember putting up my hand and saying, how do you get a stall? And the turned around and said, what do you sell? And I said, well, our voices. You know, then I got to know what the different clubs, the GAA and the rugby, they have a stall and they sell alcohol and different things to make money for their club. But the lady sitting there, Anne Dempsey, came to me and said, as she does, Network, that's Anne's middle name, and Network Dempsey. And she said, we were at the parade and the ambassadors' breakfast, and, you know, I was still getting to meet the different groups of people that I hadn't known here. And from that meeting, we went to put on the Lola Montez event, and I got more involved in it with Killian, with Henry Shefflin. And then it came up, cut a long story short, you know, a new chair of the parade, and the parade fascinated me. And I looked at it and I watched it, and I looked at how it was organized. And for me, it was just a big concert moving. And I thought, yeah, oh yeah. I watched, I didn't just step in there not knowing. And of course, we were that near to Ambassador O'Brien's first St. Patrick's Day parade in Munich. And then it was all cancelled. So we're preparing for this one. We don't know if we're going to have a parade this year, but it's Michael Collins's fault that I'm not the chair of the St. Patrick's Day parade, or anything that's going on that's also involved in culture. Neil Tobin is coming in October, 18th of October, which we're supporting at the Literary House in Munich. So that's how I ended up. Well, apart from my music goes on and my singing goes on, and I teach per Zoom. I never heard of Zoom until students from, can you go over German with this? And I said, well, how can I do that? And they taught me. Queen's University students were the first people I Zoomed. And then I'm so used to doing that now. It's difficult teaching singing, Zooming, because singing is such a physical thing. You need to touch their jaw and loosen their jaw, and it's very hard to do that on Zoom. But there was no other way, and you get used to it. And the next thing coming up now is the Irish Weekend in with the Volkshochschule, my new friends, on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of November, with concerts where you can also have lessons in flute, the fiddle, guitar, uilleann pipes, and singing. I would teach the singing. So it's all part of culture and music and poetry, and that's what my life has been. Even my son he's in the Münchner Kammerspiele, in front of the stage, not on it. And yeah, it's been a part of my life, and I love it. And I love all sorts of good music. And I think my time has come to an end. Or Thomas?
Well, Angela, we could listen to you for hours actually, but there might be people who want to ask some questions. But if you're happy to wrap up now,
well, I kind of brought it up.
Talk more, it's fine.
Yeah, I kind of brought it up to the present day because I think several people had said to me, "How did you end up?" No, they weren't surprised, but how did you end up with a St. Patrick's Day parade? And I just came to the conclusion that time when I said, "Yeah, I can do this. It's just a big concert, and I've organised on the move with a parade." I mean, it's like La Boheme in Act 2. There's a band comes on the stage and children, and in fact, those of you know Killian O'Donovan is, when I sang that in Cork Opera House, he was in the children's chorus. We found out, you know, when we started talking, he was in the chorus because he always says then, I sang with them. No, Angela sang with me when I was starting my career. But yeah, it's a small world, a big world, a great world. And I'm so glad that it was what the destiny for me was that. And I'm so glad because it never stops. You never get old when you sing because you're breathing all the time. So you're actually breathing the way we're born to breathe. So I've brought it up until that time. Of course, there's loads of things in there, but there's the things that I did are in, you know, the CV. So I just thought, you know, it's not often I tell people about my life, you know, where I grew up and what my family was. And so it was nice to do that, actually. So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Angela. That's been absolutely a joy to listen to you. And it's just struck me there when you say you never get old when you sing because you breathe the way that you're supposed to breathe, when we were born to breathe. Yes. And I can see it reflected in your face and in your whole demeanor. And I'm sure everybody will agree with me on that. We even wrote in our Twitter feed yesterday, you're ever effervescent.
Yeah.
So it must be all the breathing. We'll have to take some breathing exercises, lessons from you. And it's a great thing that your father let you take that car and that you managed managed to find way down to Dublin as you should have. And it struck me there when you were just talking about how when you came to Germany all those years ago, 43 years ago, and then you decided after a week in 1979, if you had the contract, you were getting married. So it seems you're a person who knew what you were doing and you made the right decisions. And just you talking about how German people in Germany, they keep their treasures. And you say in Ireland, we export ours, and how Germany has put the money, 20,000 Deutschmark, said, over the 2 years. It's a case of if you hadn't taken that car, if you hadn't given up that pensionable job, if you hadn't listened to Ronnie Dunn saying "stick with me" and you'd be wearing diamonds, would you have had the hankering still in your system, for example, all these years later? You don't have any regrets from what?
Oh, no, when you look at it, I was very lucky. I was very lucky, and I think it's not, if you also meet the younger group of singers come from Ireland, they're much more, not confident, they're much more prepared than I was, but I still got to where I wanted to go. Now, when I said to my mother, I want to go to Dublin. I want to be an opera singer. You know, anybody else would have said, what? My mother said, okay, so how do you go about doing that? It's the same when my son came to me. And my son is a very good sportsman, takes after his grandfather, my father, who was a great antrim hurler and footballer. And he came to me and he said, I want to be a professional basketball player. And I thought, and then I said, yeah, why not? And I said to him, look, the same thing. I went to my mother. We were 7 children in Belfast and said, I wanted to be an opera singer. So, because William said, oh, you just answered, yeah, okay. And then I thought, oh God, he has to go to America because that's where you, but in the end, he fell and got really skiing and got really damaged. So that dream, he went to another dream. Through that dream, he ended up getting a wee job in a theatre and in the lighting. And that's what became his, I mean, he's making quite a name for himself in the theatre. So there's that destiny again. I wasn't giving up. I mean, it wasn't easy. And coming to Germany and the cars travel on the different side of the road. I was so early there because I was used to buses in Dublin or in Belfast not arriving on time or not coming. But the buses in Munich, the bus stop on the opposite side, the buses are passing each other going. And so I used to be there for ages because I got so used, I must leave a bit early so that I'll get there in time. So you had all those things, you know, and when I couldn't speak German and trying to buy things. And I must confess, the first 6 months of I won a John McCormick Award. The first 6 months of that money I spent making phone calls home because it was the first time I had a room where I closed the door and there was nobody on the other side of it.
Wow. It's quite the thing. As you said, life was different. We didn't all have our mobile phones. We didn't all have
No.
Even when you said about your mother and how your mother would tell you about who had died, I mean, that's very Irish. And yes. My own mother is the same. And you're very lucky that your parents said, do it. I mean, it was quite often, even when I was growing up, it was like, you want to be a what? So
what did you want to be?
I wanted to travel around the world, talking to people, and
become an opera singer.
And I was told that was never going to happen. But there you go. That's my job now. So with that, I'll open it to the floor. I'm sure there are people who want to ask some questions, and please, I see Joanne, your hand is up. So Joanne,
hi, Joanne.
Hi. We haven't seen each other for so long. Angela, wait a moment. Am I on mute? No, I look okay. I just wanted to say, we have, as you know, we have this Irish Business Network. And during the pandemic, we've come across a couple of storytellers. One is based in Berlin, Carmel, and another guy is now based in France. He used to live in Augsburg. And they talk about storytelling and grabbing the attention and the flow, etc., etc. And you've done a fabulous job in storytelling. I mean, I know, because we've met many times, I know your story, yes. But you put it together it was very captivating, and I could feel your passion and in the whole lot, and from beginnings. And I suppose I also wanted to say, I'm not sure if I asked my dad for his car in Downcarry to go up to Dublin, I'm not sure if he would have given it to me, nor if I said I wanted to be an opera singer. Yeah, so I'm fascinated by that. I think it's fabulous how they just supported you fully, going off on your own way. And a new way, and a very different way for Irish people, even today, I think, never mind some years ago. So, but I love your storytelling, the way the story flowed and how you...
Well, there you see, there you again, and Joanne, yes, I know Joanne. In fact, Joanne brings back memory. You were in my house just a few days. Do you remember that? God, still, you think you're over it, but you're not. There's a thing for the storytellers, you know, who Because I'm sure you took a car somewhere, Joanne, because you're a long time in Germany as well, or?
Yes,
How did
20
you-
years. 20
Well, so
years.
which car did you take? Such a great question. Which car did you take? Somebody used to say to me,
Okay.
"Oh, the best road out of best road." No, what was it? I was out of Limerick. You know, the best road to get. I can't remember. She used to always say that, you know, because she drove. She did it. That's a really. I never thought about that, Joanne. Getting the car. But I always remember I was so shocked when he said yes. But there's a good thing. What car did you take?
Well, actually, when I finished college, I had a small loan, or maybe it was a big loan in those days. So my father said, finish paying the loan back to the bank, and then I'll get you a car, and you can then pay me back, but without interest. So that was a huge incentive to pay that bloody loan back. And then I had a car. It was a Ford Fiesta in 1982. And it could have been the biggest Mercedes in the world. It was total freedom.
His was a Ford Cortina.
Okay.
Cortina.
Good old Ford.
Yeah, so that changed various colours because that was another thing. We lived on the White Rock Road, which is just off the Falls Road, the famous Falls Road, and across from us was a graveyard. And beside us was a GAA pitch, McCrory Park, but the army came and took it over. So that's what I mean, and I don't want to make it sound, oh God, poor us, poor us. It was terrible, but they used to fire from the graveyard over into the Fort Pegasus. And I mean, I've lost count of many times we lost our windows with the force of that, you know, because we lived right beside them. And that car was always out on that road, on the White Rock Road. And it got so many colours because it got damaged so often. My brother Michael worked in the bus depot, so he would take it off. So you never were sure what colour it was going to come back. And it usually came back often in that red, you know, the buses, the red buses in Belfast. So that's a really interesting. You should put that to your thing. It's a great thing. Which car did you get, or how did you drive away? You know, because how long are you in Germany?
In my case, I came in 2001, but I left Ireland in 1989, and I went to the Netherlands.
See, I never knew that.
Yeah.
You think you know somebody, but I never knew you were in Holland before.
And the biggest thing about going to the Netherlands, I was totally shocked at how direct they were. It took me a very long time to get used to this absolute directness.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You know, we're always wanderers. Irish people are wanderers. And but as I said earlier on, it's nice. I would have loved to have stayed at home and join the opera house, but I probably would have wanted to, you know, because there's, you know, when you think of the Irish thing, Munich is one of the top opera companies in Europe and one of the top actually in the world. And to think that we drove our cars away and then took a plane, you know, to come here and to be given so much. Yeah, that's a really lovely thought. And I thought, which car did you take? And I knew it was important to me, that car trip, because it took me about an hour to find him down the docks. It's a massive place, and there's hard work. Oh, there's hard work. And when he said yes, I thought, great. And then I got such a shock. How did I get there? Because I'd never driven to Dublin. I was always on a train or a bus, you know, and I got picked up. Not picked up, I was collected to go on down to the people. But every now and then I meet one at home and said, remember I gave you a lift down to get your lesson? Oh, and remember I gave you a lift back. It's amazing, you know, what we did. You just had to, there was no other option. Is that or stay at home? So your storytellers, there's a title for them. Which car did you take to leave?
I think we have a couple of questions coming in there as well. Joanne, did you want to ask another question, or Carol?
No.
Yeah, microphone's up, sorry. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but Angela, I'd like to thank you very much indeed for this absolutely great talk. I'm sitting here identifying with various parts of it. I'm not a great singer, not at all, but I'm actually originally from the south of Ireland. I met my husband, my Belfast husband, in Germany. We, with Jugendlichen Leichtsinn, moved back to Belfast in the early 80s. I don't know why, but it was very enriching for all sorts of things, but it was darned hard in all kinds of other ways.
Yes,
I actually worked up the Springfield. I had a very privileged address on the Malone Road.
Very posh.
Very posh indeed. And
wow.
Then in Stranmillis, but I worked up the Springfield Road. So I was used to going up the Grosvenor, crossing the Fall Road during the hunger strike in 80 and 81. And I feel I just have to say a little tiny thing about this car story. We were desperate to leave Belfast. My husband got a job in Germany. I stayed on to basically earn the money to follow and drove over here in a very old Renault. I've forgotten what make of Renault. It wasn't terribly important to me. Piled with a roof rack with all our worldly possessions. I never forget the night I drove out to the Dublin docks to get on the boat to Liverpool, and then I crossed from Hull to Rotterdam and drove to Düsseldorf, where my husband had gone at the time. I started driving up the ramp with the cars. They came, no, stop. You won't get in with that height. So I had to go in and drive up with the heavy freight. It's the nearest to becoming a lorry driver I've ever been. That's just a little bit of background from me. And we are very much looking forward to meeting you at this Irish weekend in Munich.
Oh, great. Are you going?
Yes, we actually live in Osnabrück. Our daughter...
Where?
In Osnabrück.
Osnabrück, okay.
Yeah. Our daughter, who's meanwhile a music journalist in Cape Town, is back visiting us at the moment. So the three of us are coming down as a sort of family outing to the Irish weekend in Munich. So,
are you going to take part in any of the classes?
Well, I probably won't, because I'm actually on the board of, I also owe an awful lot to Germany. My career has been in the world of languages, and I'm on the board of the BDU, the Professional Association of Translators and Interpreters.
Are you?
I'm going to accompany my daughter and my husband. I'll be going to the concerts, but I have to do an online thing on the Saturday. But my husband's going to be part of your singing class, and my daughter has registered for the Borum. And just one, I must leave space for other people, but I was at another event, a BDU event in Fulda a couple of weeks ago, and mentioned my Irish background. Oh, wow, do you know the Irish parade in Munich? It's really great, and you have to go there sometime, and so on. So word gets around.
Have you been?
I've never been, no. I followed the mass and aspects of it when it was streamed.
Yes.
Thanks very much to the Irish Embassy for that this year, but I've never been. No, it's quite a long way from...
Well, it was actually Munich Irish Network that were responsible for the streaming of that parade.
Oh, well, thank you very much indeed.
Just streaming, yes, it was them. And the Deutsche Irische Freundschaft. And what is your husband's name?
Alan.
What?
Alan Hogg.
Alan Hogg. Well, if I see him, and I won't ask you private questions, when I see him, I'll see where he was from in Belfast, and we're very nosy. He's from Belfast.
Oh, yeah, he grew up in Feeney.
I saw. Oh, so he's just up the road from me. Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. It's a pity, but do come in, even if you'd like to just sit in and listen. Because you see that, and I want to say to Thomas, when I was asked to do that, it's not with professional singers. You know, people come to and sometimes I'm a bit worried because I think, oh, they don't take it seriously. And you know me, I wanted to be the best and all of this. So, but I did it. Thomas said, could you please come and do this? And I did it. It was it's in its 19th year, one of the best organized, top standard things that I'd well, can't compare it to teaching at university or giving master classes. It is absolutely fantastic how they are, and the standard of the teachers and the players. I was amazed at it. So do when I'm looking forward to hearing him sing and working with him, because I always say to them, no matter what, when you leave this room, there's one thing you will be able to do, and that is to breathe properly. Because no matter what type of singing you do, if you can't breathe, you can forget it. Do you know what? Over this COVID, I was starting giving courses to older people. And my son says, Mommy, they're the same age as you. But I said, older, teaching them how to breathe through this COVID, because keeping your lungs healthy, it's so important just to do in the mornings, is to breathe. And I teach that anyway, because as I said to Thomas, breathing keeps you young and healthy, because you're opening your lungs the way you were born to open them. So, what's your first name?
Carol.
Carol. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I look forward very much to meeting you.
Where it is, and there's a lake. So I need a large room, and there's a lake, and it is absolutely stunning. I so enjoyed it, and then it was cancelled last year, but we have it this year. Yeah. What a story! Another car story.
Yeah. Okay, well,
that's beautiful. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, me too. To meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. I'm looking forward to that. See, it's a small world, Thomas.
It's a very small world, and it's good to get everybody's story while they're here. And I'm going to invite, if anybody else on the line wants to tell their car story or wants to
the car story. Never mind singing. Tell your car story. I just think it was a lovely idea. You see, that's how ideas come up. Sitting, chatting, talking.
And Elias has his hand up there, and I wanted a question about the number of Irish singers across Germany. If there's any sort of networking or mapping of them, that's something that within the embassy we'd be very, very interested in as well. Because of course we have a new appointed, well, he's here a year now, cultural officer who's doing an awful lot of work and has really increased our reach.
Candice.
Yeah, Candice has really increased our reach here in Germany. We just look at our social media figures and our data, and it really has expanded exponentially, and to the extent that Dublin are taking note as to how we have broadened our footprint here in Germany, not just physically with the opening of the consulate in Frankfurt, but the actual digital outreach and what are the drivers of that and how it resonates. And you know, we're very lucky. We're in a country, I've worked in 4 other countries before here, but we're very lucky in Germany. As you say, if they like something, they'll take you along. And it seems that German people seem to have a resonance or a natural frequency that mixes with the Irish cultural vibe, if I can say that, or whatever. You'll know more about it than me, but wherever we're resonating at, we seem to be in a lot of ways and sort of crossing over and mixing quite well.
Well, the Celts went through Germany, yeah? The Celts, went through, So, you know, that is there. And Thomas, I did have the German-Irish Council thing, we were setting up our site. I had gone through and found out where all the German singers were, because there were some who were just making guest appearances. And I have a list. I don't know if that list is still viable, because so much as, and my idea was all the singers that are dotted over Germany to come to Berlin and sing, and also mix it in with accompanists from Germany, you know, do that mix. And I did that here one time. I did a big event, Northern Ireland now. It was after the Good Friday Agreement. And so we brought the musicians from Ireland, but we mixed them in. My husband was teaching at the Conservatory. I mixed them in. It's that, you know, accompanying. They learned music that they didn't know. And that was my plan. I was also wanting to do an Aisling Yall event, a week event with it, but sure, everything happened. But I am determined, because it's at the embassy where the ambassador is, to, and he's very interested in that. And when this settles down and we find out, because we've kind of lost track of the next generation of singers. I mean, Tara had organised a concert there the other night in Dublin for singers who have finished their training and that. But, you know, there was nothing like, they used to get jobs and get parts in the concert hall, and you got to know them, or you got to know them at the Féisceoil. But we don't know that. That's nearly 2 years of a generation of students who did exams, but we don't know them. You know, they've missed out on that chance. So that was my plan. And because I spoke in Ben, we have a wonderful baritone in Wiesbaden, Ben Russell. And you have one in Berlin, Porik, what's Porik's second name? He's a baritone. He just was starting off when this started. So we do, and I think it's important that we do show off that they're here and that we are. We've already been doing it for a long time, our footprint in Germany as Irish people, but I think now it's a title, it has a title now, and it's great when you have a title, and you will not lose promoting young singers or young musicians as well. That's another thing I've kept up, the young instrumentalists that are in German orchestras. So it's an idea that I've had there, but it's kind of sat on the boiling in the water. So you're dead right. So there's the idea. You have it. You said it. So we take it on. Never say anything to me, because I keep reminding you. But
on the record now. Sorry, I saw Elias, my colleague here at the embassy, and the public diplomacy team wanted to ask a question as well.
Yes, so thank you very much for this lovely talk, Angela, and I can confirm it was indeed effervescent, but on top of that, I also enjoyed the warm and very upbeat attitude with which you talked about your life story and your journey. So thank you for that. And I was wondering, early in your career, were there any opera singers, maybe famous opera singers, who inspired you or whom you considered as icons, or someone who who you wanted to emulate? Were there any guiding lights in in this sense in your career early on?
what a brilliant question. When I was learning music, and I mean, I just ate music. I learned, and Ronnie said, you have to be prepared, you have to be prepared. I listened to Margaret Price. I listened to Lucia Pop. I listened even to, when I was doing the duets, what you call him? He's dead now. They're all dying off. But Elias, when I came here and was in the opera studio, and you get small roles to sing, I never forget one of my first roles is a little part in Tannhäuser. But then we came to the Mozart operas, because I'm a great lover of Mozart. And I was singing one of the Little Flower Girls, who was standing on that stage, not on the stage, in the rehearsal rooms as the Contessa, Margaret Price. I learned most of my lieder, most of my operas, because she was a very famous opera singer, and she was standing there. Then people that I knew of but hadn't listened to, Leontine Price, Astrid Farnay. I mean, this was then a house full of stars, full of all. Lucia Pop, who then became a mentor of mine, a brilliant singer. And there she was, our Gruberova, Edith Gruberova, one of the most famous, she's still singing actually, coloratura. And I wish I'd prepared myself better to think back of all those singers, but you're right, there they were. And I was sitting in the same room, listening to them live. And that was, I mean, she was, for me, Margaret Price was, and then we had Tebaldi, the Italian, that's where I learned all my Italian operas, Butterfly. I listened to the most when I was studying Butterfly, and then to sing it. And I would go to these places when I moved up singing the bigger roles, and I would have costumes on where their names were in. They were the original singers. So the costumes, they have larger or smaller, but their names were into it. And then later on, I came to sing the contest. I didn't get Margaret Price's costume because she was a different size to me, but it was it's just so jaw-dropping. Look, I'm so excited about it because I just think it's a fabulous question. I never thought about to drop names, but that was to see them standing and they come over and ask you what you're doing and could they help. Great singers, great people are like that. It's the ones that aren't sure of themselves or are not great, or the prima donnas. Great people like Astrid Varnay, one of the most. See, at one stage I wanted to sing Wagner. I just thought he's even more difficult than the rest. He's more of a challenge. And Astrid Varnay, the Wagner singer of her time, of our time. I mean, everybody wants to be an Astrid Varnay. She was there and then became a mentor in the opera studio. So to be in the mix, to be with great people, and I'd say to students, if you're with great people and you look and watch, you'll become great. Because if you have a high standard, what's better than what you knew before when you hear that and see how they work. Birgit Nilsson was another one, the famous Swedish soprano Birgit Nilsson, and she used to come down. She would sing the Strauss operas, and she would warm up in the room singing the Queen of the Night aria. It's of that. That was oh God, all those stories. What a question! I'd forgotten kind of about that because you move on, and they're all dead now. My goodness. So you're kind of what my mother used to say, you're in the waiting lounge. What do you call that when you don't have a seat but you're waiting for a seat? What is that called on a plane? The waiting lounge. Yeah, that's what she would say about herself. And they loved it. Of course, my parents had a great time. They could travel around where their daughter was singing and, hear these great singers that they heard me listening to. Learning my music. So yeah, it was a great time, Elias. It was, yeah. Yep.
Thank you very much for this answer, Angela.
Not at all. It was a lovely question. What car did you take? He doesn't.
So, was that a question to me or to Thomas?
To you.
So, what car did I take? That's the question.
Car. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. I put you in a spot. I won't do that. I'll never put anybody.
The thing is, I don't own a car here in Berlin. You don't really need one when you're living as downtown as I do.
No, but when you went off to study or went off to do whatever you were able to stay in Berlin. You weren't born in Berlin.
No, what I did was I took the train because I studied in my home region, and I sold my car when I started studying because I realized the city I'm going to will also not really require me to own a car.
Yeah. No, I don't own one in Munich because I live right in the center. I could walk to work. I could walk to most of any place. So no, yeah, right. So he went on the train, which we should have done. Well, I was on a train too when it went.
I think it's a generational thing as well.
It is, yes, it is. He's much younger than us, and so is Thomas. No, not us, younger than me.
Well, I hopped in a Mini. I took a Mini, a very old Mini, but that's another story. I'm conscious that, and I look good in a Mini, and I'm conscious that is going. There might be people needing to get back to work.
Yeah.
But
yes.
I just want to, again, thank you, Angela, and I'll just say that we have a John Hanley 100% Irish lamb's wool scarf as a gift that we're going to send to you.
That's lovely.
We hope it's a colour that will suit your design.
My Corona colour. I've gone Corona colour.
Keep those vocal cords warm in
Oh,
the weather that is. And then I just want to ask you just 2 questions, Angela. And I don't know if anybody else wants to ask any other questions, but just one question is, what has been the highlight of your life, whether that's been professional or personal, or if you want to give us one example of each, what would it be? Then what piece of advice would you give to anybody who wants to follow down your path, or just wants to make it in Germany, or just a general piece of life advice that you give to people?
right. So probably in my private life, of course, my family life, but my personal family life and with Nico, and then of course my son, our son William, and probably to add on to that is because my mother had 17 grandchildren, and I just watched her, and that kept her young. She didn't sing, but she just kept me young till 85. And I have 2, and it's being a granny is one of the, I now understand she was just a different person. Well, she was great with us, but with the grandchildren, I was like, my God, she's so patient with them and she'll do anything. And that for me, having Finn and Matteo, especially in this time, they were my bubble. That for me was one of the highlights of all my private life. I've been very lucky, especially we were both musicians, to meet the man that I did. And with our son, who is a total joy, and he's just, nobody has a son like my son. But being a granny privately is the highlight, because those 2 boys, one has just started gymnasium, the other one has gone into, Matteo only knows Corona school. He started school when Corona started. So he thinks, oh, you're free and you're off and you do your homework at home and but then Finn has gone and he's already, can you imagine, Joanne, he's in gymnasium now.
Wow,
and
wow.
Oh God, it's just to see him, he's just so young. So in my singing career, probably of all the places that I sang and singing here, I've had many, many highs. But I think going home to Belfast, having been known there as a folk singer, and singing, making my debut actually in the opera house there, with Madame Butterfly. And I mean, I know people that went to an opera that would never been in an opera, didn't really know what the opera was, but just because I was home and the opera house is just down the Grosvenor Road, and that reaction to that I never forget, when I came out on stage and seeing some of the people in the audience that I didn't expect to be there, because it was the first time I was home singing opera. And it was a great production. It was just a great experience. That's one, there's a lot of them, but that one, going home to sing at home, and then also down to Cork. I love singing in Cork. You see, the Cork people all the big opera singers used to, on their way to America, pull in to Cork before they left.
Yeah.
So there's a great, I don't know what it is like now, but that group, they would kind of be singing along the arias with you, if you'd look down. I love singing in Cork. And what was the third one? Giving advice. Right. If you want to do this, it's like every job, really, everything you want to do it. Find out the information. It's all there now. It wasn't when I came. But, you know, it's like everything else, work for it and just always try to be better and better and better. Like that's me. As I said before, I'm very competitive. I'm not unfriendly competitive, but especially with my students in Queens, when I started bringing them to the Feis Ceoil, which had never been done before, and I said, next year we'll take that trophy back, you know, because I had to see the competition. And the best thing was to beat Ronnie Dunn singers. That was all her students that were teaching. The thing was to beat Ronnie Dunn's students, which was agreed. It's a friendly competition because, you know, Ronnie always, I mean, she went, how many years did you send students out? But see if she didn't win. Oh, she was not happy. Or her students, she was not happy. So that's what you just do the best thing you can say to students. And I say to them, come in, no matter what, learn languages, do languages. Because if you don't do this, you can go to Brussels, get a great job, get a great pensionable job in Brussels, and you're in the middle and the thick of things. For me, languages, apart from the climate and all that, languages are one of the way forward. If you have languages, you are, you know, up in the list for jobs. It's what we need now is languages. And so that's just my tip. And enjoy and love what you do. That's and I mean, God, that's not hard to do when you sing.
Very
Okay,
much.
thank you so much. It was lovely. It was
Thank you,
very
Angela.
okay. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Take care. Don't forget to breathe.